Leading off our discussion tonight is Senator Mark Warner, Democrat of Virginia. He's the vice chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee. Senator, thank you very much for joining us tonight. No one in the Senate has better information about what has been happening and why than you do. What is your understanding as of now, if you have one, about why Donald Trump started this war?
Well, Lawrence, first of all, thank you for paying tribute to the fallen heroes. There are now 6 American soldiers who've died. And Donald Trump and his folks have said there will be many more. Expect more casualties. And it's heartbreaking to hear you lay it out this way. And the unfortunate thing is I can't rebut what you've said. This was a war of choice. I'm on the Intelligence Committee. I'm part of the Gang of 8. If there was any imminent threat to America, I would know about it. There was no imminent threat. And as you pointed out, Lawrence, we have had now 4 different answers from this administration about why Donald Trump chose to go to war. First, it was going to be about eradicating the nuclear activities, which he said had been obliterated 7 months ago. Obviously not. Then it was about the ballistic missiles, which would ultimately pose a threat at some point to America, and as a strong supporter of Israel, would pose a threat to Israel, but not imminently at a level of existentialists. Third, we heard recently it was to get rid of the Iranian Navy. We'd never heard of that until the last couple of days. And then he said regime change, or his people said regime change. And you raised the point. You know, if Donald Trump called the Iranian people to go to the streets and there's 100,000 Iranian protesters on the streets of Tehran, and the IRGC, the Iranian military that is still left, kills 5,000, 10,000, 15,000, what is our obligation to help those protesters? We have no answers. We had a chance today to draw a line in the sand for Congress to use its constitutional power. And unfortunately, we didn't get a majority. And where we head from now is uncharted. And I beg and implore my Republican friends who I believe in our country, but stand up to this man. Exert your rights. You know, call him to make the case. Lawrence, I was on Sunday in Virginia Beach and Norfolk, where most of the sailors who were on the carrier, the Ford, that's been deployed in the region, I saw many of their families saying, why are my sons and daughters there? What is their duty? They will protect our country. They will do their duty. But what is our goal here? And I couldn't give them an answer. And I'm a senior United States senator. I was embarrassed that I couldn't give them an answer. And I voted, obviously, yes, to say stop this until you make the case. And unfortunately, today, the United States Senate failed that basic constitutional duty to require the commander-in-chief to make the case to the American public and to Congress before he declares war. This is not a military action. This is a war.
When you see the 53 Senate votes to basically, they voted to do nothing. You voted to stop it. They voted to do nothing in terms of what the vote actually was. Why isn't that majority of 53 writing a legal authorization or a declaration of war for Donald Trump to do this and trying to pass that? Are there 53 votes in the Senate to vote in favor of Donald Trump's war and to give him actual legal authorization to do it?
I do not believe so. And thank God for my dear friend Tim Kaine, who has had the courage to raise this issue time and again. And for your viewers, Tim Kaine raised this issue even against Barack Obama, that you have to have congressional authorization. And when Congress cedes power to an executive that knows no boundaries, you know, it is not only in terms of this question of war. You know, remember, in January, when the streets were filled with millions of Iranians protesting, and the regime was brutal. I shed no tears over the awful leaders of Iran who've been eliminated. But when there was a chance maybe to help move forward. Trump couldn't move forward because the aircraft carrier that would have helped was deployed on another one of his missions off the coast of Venezuela, when our European allies, who could have helped with both knowledge and pressure against this brutal regime, they couldn't focus in January because Trump was obsessed with his crazy notion about Greenland. This president, who tries to say not America first, but America alone, leaves us less safe, and then takes these actions, frankly, without any imminent threat to America. And we see these stories of these brave soldiers who gave their lives, and their parents and the sister. I don't know how I would explain, at this point, why her brother was lost in this conflict. And unfortunately, the president has said repeatedly, and his advisors have said, there will be many more casualties. And for what? Is this making America safer? Again, I'm a strong supporter of Israel, but there was not even an imminent threat to Israel. So where will this lead us? And will this lead us to be less safe when our allies can't depend upon us? And God forbid, if hundreds of thousands of people go to the streets against the remnants of this brutal regime and then are brutally murdered by the Iranian military forces, do we not owe some obligation then to them because of Donald Trump's choice to go to war?
Senator, with all your experience in the Intelligence Committee and now as the co-chair of the Intelligence Committee, in the scenario you just described, massive mass murder, basically, in Iran, if there is any kind of uprising, what will we actually be able to know about it that they've kind of closed off any possibility of getting real news out of Iran? How will we know if thousands of Iranians are killed by the regime? How will we know if thousands more are killed by the American military? How will we really know what's happening inside Iran?
Well, Lawrence, we have still exquisite abilities in terms of overhead, satellite, and others. And our Israeli allies have visibility. But we also have a number of other nations who are traditionally our allies, like our European friends, who have much deeper contacts because they have maintained relations with Iran. But they are suspect of us now because, Donald Trump does not appear to be a dependable ally when we should be united against fighting against true tyrants like Putin. Or when we hear, unfortunately, the Canadian Prime Minister say that maybe China is a more dependable partner than America. None of this makes America or Americans safer. And that is heartbreaking. And to see this, the images, it hit me in a way I didn't expect, to see the images of these families who their sons were doing what their duty was. And I think about the literally thousands of sailors who were on the Gerald Ford, the biggest aircraft carrier in the world, a great vessel that have been deployed now 9 months. The toilets are starting to back up. These sailors were supposed to be back home months ago. I talked to a mom who's got a Navy mom who's got 4 kids, explaining why the dad was not going to come home in February. She will do her duty. But how does she explain to her kids how much longer her dad's going to be there, and for what purpose? Is this making America safer? Again, Iran was awful. The regime, I shed no tears. But if there's not a plan, and if there's not an imminent threat to America, why would we put our troops in harm's way?
Senator Mark Warner, thank you very much for starting off our coverage tonight.
Thank you, Lawrence.